All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is another book review. And today I'm going to be doing a book review on the Grimoire of Asha'Shedim. And this is the book. Okay. It's got a grand total of 223 pages. Talks about the Lilin Society and a few other things. This book is basically based off various different traditions such as chaos, Gnosticism, the left-hand path, Voodoo, Quimbanda, and the cult of La Santa Muerte, Asha'Shedim. It was created for a lot of different things, including Hermetism. Okay. Now, I found this book to be, when I first was introduced to this book, I didn't know what to think of it. I mean, it sounded cool, it looked cool. Look, let's just be fair, it looked badass. Okay. And when I read down through it, it was the first time that I came across Quimbanda and, most importantly, Santa Muerte. Now, I've been aware of Santa Muerte for a while, especially that from the Mexican and South American derivative of Santa Muerte. But I did not know that there was another tradition called La Santa Muerte, which is not only one of the fastest traditions here in the US, but it goes all the way back to Portugal and Spain, which I thought was pretty cool. I did not realize that there were two different traditions of this, and both of them have a very unique perspective on Saint Death. The one in Mexico really appears much in the same way as Mary, okay, from the Catholic Church, or that from the main JCI Bibles. But this system in here doesn't really go into depth about a lot of things. It doesn't really go into great detail upon the practices, upon the history, the mythology, even, or even the gods themselves. It does have a few gods in there, like Moloch or Inanna. Okay, but let's go into something right here, real fast here, and I'm going to go to a basic ritual for gnosis, and then it goes to rites of Moloch, the ritual of Neshesh, spelled Necchesh, the prayer to Iblis, and those are basically the only deities that this book really speaks on. Outside of that, it deals mostly with a little bit of archaic or arcane perspectives of certain rituals or path workings. For an example, let's see. Definition, the ritual of the inner flame. Okay, let's go to page 53. Okay. The Grimoire of Asha'Shedim, preparation, the chamber. Okay. Gives a small little definition of what it is or how it's viewed these days. A warning, the ideal location, and by the time you get to page 55, you have this. Okay. Notice the swastika. Okay. A lot of people today have they have the wrong impersonation of, or the wrong impression, I should say, of the swastika. A lot of people don't even want it on their sites. They don't even want it to even be spoken of because they equate this with the neo-Nazi party, okay, of World War II, World War I, and the like. Basically, Adolf Hitler, okay? They forget that in occultism or ritualized witchcraft sorcery, going all the way back into alchemy, okay, worldwide, this one symbol has at least a dozen or more names, okay? And just to give you that perspective, I'll be right back. I have the book right over here. Okay, you want to know symbols? Check this book out. Okay, the Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated. I'm going to go into the back of the book for this because it's really the fastest way. That's that. All right. Page 407. The swastika, the cross patty with two e's at the end. The Croix patty. You have the cross dissimulata, the crux gemata, the filfort, the filefort, the gamma cross, the gammadian, the hammer of creation, the hammer of Thor, the hermetic cross, the Jayan cross, the Jayana cross, the Li Wen, and so many different other names to which it was derived from. Okay? Now, I don't know if you could see that, but that's a little bit there, and then the rest is right there. Okay? Everything above that, where my finger is, and all those right there underneath the swastika itself. Okay? So you can see what I mean. You can't just look at one period of time and more from, say, 70 years ago and say, well, we're just going to throw it away. You can't do that. So to see it in this one here with the triangle of evocation, albeit the inverted triangle of evocation, I thought that was kind of interesting because I've never seen that outside of the verdict. Now, you go on to the next page, you got numerology 415176. You have various different occult symbols. Okay. The tetragrammation, for an example, from the clavicle of Solomon. Okay. This is also found within the Hermetics, the Kabbalah, and most importantly, you can find it in the Enochian Keys by Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly. Okay, so then you go into a few others, you're getting into demonolatry. But once you get into page 60, you get an overall perspective of how their altar looks like. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is the tools that are used. He does speak a little bit about the tools. The graveyard dirt, salt and blood mix, cemetery scepter, sexual elixir, essence of rot, black bag of animal bones, the black bag of animal dust, the Ngangas. The Nganga is actually Santeria, Impedo Mayumbi, and Quimbanda and Umbanda practices. It's actually a cauldron. It's where it's also known as a spirit box in their variation of it. It's where they they house the Ugan that chooses to work with them or is given to them at the moment of initiation into priesthood. Okay, this is basically, those systems are actually different from most systems, so I would recommend that you get into them to understand them. Okay, you got some good amount of prayer, and then you get into voodoo. Okay, now right here you'll notice one page and two paragraphs. That's just on voodoo. Okay, you go into the next page, types of Loa, the peristyle, creating sacred space, tools of voodoo, the spells and rituals in voodoo, the death potion, the heal physical pain, okay, death of an enemy, the voodoo ritual of the crossroads, and then you get into herbs and stuff like that. But it really doesn't go into depth about where these things come from. Is it hoodooism or is it actually voodoo? And if it's voodoo, is it from New Orleans? Haitian voodoo, meaning Haiti or the Dominican Republic, okay? Or even that of Africa, because you also got Ethiopia, Congo, Malawi. All these regions literally practice voodoo, okay? Not just here in the US or in South America. Hell, not even in Russia. And voodoo is actually practiced in Russia. I learned that over the last year, okay? That was a surprise to me. But then you go into the Vivis of Baron Samedi, the Ugu Ferre, okay, Dembella, and so forth. The Ugan, again, the Ugan, the Marissa, Papalegba, and so forth. But it doesn't go through, it's only a small glimpse of a very few Loa, okay? I can name off several books right now that is sitting right over there on my bookshelf that give you at least a dozen, if not 2 dozen Loa. Okay? One book will even give you almost 50 different Loa. Okay? The Seven Kingdoms of Quimbanda. Okay? And it goes right into them. And then it will go into, you got it, Saint Death herself. The Book of the Holy Dead and her cult, her death cult. Goes into, this one here actually had quite a bit of information on La Santa Muerte, so I was very impressed with this one. But it came to you, and it was written in the form of Aztecs, utilizing the deities of the Aztecs. Okay, Mictlan, the Lord and Lady of the Mictlan. Okay, the Geometra of the Saints of Death, using numerology yet again, and so forth. Going into how to create the altar, the days of devotion, initiation. Well, for one, 9 days of prayer. Apparently, this individual never read the Grimoire of Santa Muerte, Volume 1 and 2. Because Volume 1 literally has at least 12 to 17 to 24 days of prayer. Okay? Saturn adversary, welcome. And then from here, it goes into the annotation. So you really have a huge, quite a few pages here just on La Santa Muerte. So I did find that very interesting. And this individual, when he wrote this book, he really did go into some other basics. Like, for an example, when you get into Palo Mayombe, you learn about the symbols, the seals. that they utilize, that they draw, much in the same way as Voodoo, with the chalk in the ground, on the ground, or on a tree, or on vessels. Okay, and this one here is actually for Santa Morte, or La Santa Morte, I should say. So to have seen that one there for Santa Morte, I found that very interesting, because in all the grimoires that I've seen and read from that tradition, I've never seen anybody put a seal or a sigil in such a manner. So this was definitely the first time I've seen that. Eh. Hey, Joshua. Anyways, it goes into the different rituals on that aspect. And before long, you end up in all the herbs and stuff. So, but I also like the fact that not only are you learning about La Santa Morte here, but much in the same way as Voodoo or Quimbanda, you've also got the traditional altar setup. Okay, kind of reminds you of the Wiccans and pagans, don't you? Doesn't it? I found that very interesting. The same kind of setup. One might say it's also can be a satanic altar. I've seen a video from I want to say it was Baltic, if not Czech Republic, of a group with a specific altar setup that was not for the light of heart. And then you go into Wisdom of Nahamath. That was something interesting. The Liber Inferno. Now we're getting into other aspects, such as Baphomet, Orion, Moloch, and seeing where those deities at the beginning of the book really get into. And this starts on page, let me get back here. This starts on page 176, okay? Going into the Black Flame of Orion, which is Zoroastrianism, by the way. He's known as the Dark God, opposer to Ahura Mazda, the Mad God. And this one here I thought was kind of cool because of the fact that he refers to himself as I am the wolf among the flock. Kind of reminds me of Satanism. The lone wolf amongst the sheep. Ironic. And then he brings in Kali. Kali, the goddess of destruction, the destroyer, the mate to Shiva. Interesting. Within a ritual fashion. And then, of course, you can't have it without Lucifer, Raphael, Astaroth, Asmodai, Naama, Lilith, Baal, Belphegor, Adremelech, Beelzebut, Moloch, Satan. Right there, you got demonolatry. And then you go into the Weaver, known as the Spider in the Moon, and various other things that I found to be very new and interesting. For an example, on page 203, you have the Gola Shab, spelled Golachab. Now, what I found interesting was they are giants, enormous, with grotesque heads upon grotesque bodies. The tops of their heads erupt and spew molten lava. Kind of sounds like a dragon, really. But at the same time, he seems to literally go into the old realms of folklore and old wives' tales. So I did find this one very interesting because he also went into Thermiel, Ogiel, Satyriel, Gash Gala, and so forth, going into the tree of life or death, depending on how you want to look at it. The Liber LPDLS. Not sure what that stands for, but it's there. He doesn't really explain a lot. It's like he's picking and choosing at random what he's talking about. But at the very end, he talks about the Lilin Society, and that was very insightful. He's got a lot of information upon that within this. And then on page 216, the Pact with the Devil. Seems like everybody wants to have a pact with the devil these days, or the annotation ritual. 1 week worth of blood, bones, sigil of the 11, the Black Santa Morte statue, a drawn sigil with sacrifice, the petition, memorize the rules, bone shaker. Kind of reminds me of the bone eater out of European folklore. Very interesting. And then, of course, you can't have a book without a photo of the author. And then, like I said, a little bit about what you can read or look into. This one here is actually square.lilinsociety.com. I'm pretty sure it's just .lilinsociety.com. But outside of that, there's a lot of things in that book that I have found personally useful within the study and practice of some of these religions over the years. Over the last couple of years, I've gotten back into Voodoo, gotten back into Palo Mayombe, Santa Morte, and Quimbanda. Not just Satanism and witchcraft. But I've really, over the last 2 years, delved into necromancy on just about a full-time basis. And a lot of what's in here, I've come across in various different regions of European and Middle Eastern cultures, especially from the traditions of those regions. So a lot of them, even though he didn't go into detail on a lot of them, to the point where it would actually give you that understanding, that enlightenment factor without leaving you confused. He basically is wetting what I refer to as wetting your whistle. Okay? Wetting your whistle. Now, what do I mean by wetting your whistle? Wetting your whistle is getting you that thirst, that hunger for it, that connection. It's piqued your interest to the point where you go out and you actually delve into these traditions and you start learning them. You go out and you buy all the books. You go out and you get all the tools and you start experimenting. You start setting up altars and doing rituals and stuff like that. That you do that on your own, okay? And it normally starts with a book, okay? The first book that I ever got on occultism was the Satanic Bible by Anton Zandaleve. His mythology really didn't sit well with me, but the names of the demons in the Book of Belial really did. Okay? The rules and regulations I still go by today because they really fit me as an individual and what I'm about. So you're going to find when you delve into these systems, there's going to be things that attract you like a moth to a flame. This book was one of those said books for me. Maybe it will do the same for you so it'll get you at least on the right track of where in the world, what region these practices were practiced. Okay. Now, keep in mind, I've been practicing a really long time, but I'm still learning new things today. Since I've gotten into necromancy, I found a lot of books and a lot of regions have much older traditions and insights, not just the names of the practitioners. For example, the Polero. A lot of the Latin and African Caribbean traditions utilize the term mamba or mambo, the Hugan or the witch doctor. Okay. The Polero, the Bruja or Brujo. Okay. The names are just different names for those who practice these traditions, much like a witch or a warlock. Okay. The Hexa, the Agi, the Strega, even in old ancient times. So when you delve into these regions and you start getting into these books, this particular book in general, keep in mind you're probably going to have more questions than you have answers. But it will give you enough that you're able to trace the systems back to their origins. If you have a personal, a public library that's near you, you can always get this book or the books that pique your interest, that speak upon the topics and information within this book, to find different perceptions of it. And a lot of times those are going to lead you into the sources, the regions that they were mainly practiced, how they were viewed. Santa Morte was probably one of those African Caribbean traditions that broke off from La Santa Morte, for all I know, or vice versa. What I can tell you about them is that they are two different practices. One is used strictly for a way of life. The other one is for beneficial. One's spiritual, one's physical. Okay? Same thing with Voodoo. You have the physical applications, but you've also got the spiritual. So therefore, you have to be like a shaman or a necromancer and walk in two worlds. Okay? Sometimes you're called, other times you choose the path. But either way, it starts with a book. It's up to you. All right? Have a good night, and until next time.